Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to the ASF Weekly Science Podcast with me, Alicia Halliday. I'm going to tell you about two very important projects. The first uses a very precious resource, postmortem brain tissue. If you've been on the ASF webpage lately, or if you've been to an Autism Speaks walk, you know that ASF, Autism Speaks, and the Simons Foundation, together with the University of California at Davis, are working together to inform the community about the importance of registering for brain tissue donation. As a little bit of a public service announcement here, I want to tell you how important this is. Registering for the program is not the same as consent. Registering allows you to receive information and declares yourself willing to donate in the event of your death. If you are willing to donate after you die, or if you're even interested, sign up at takesbrains.org. Your family will be given the final say, but this really does open up the door for a conversation. So why is brain tissue so important for research? Frankly, if we want to study a disorder involving the brain, we need to study the brain. In order to do that, we need samples of brain tissue. While we can do things and use techniques to study brain activation and brain size and brain chemistry, we really can't get to the basic questions about what happens in the brains of autism without actually studying brains of people with autism. Started in 1998, the Autism Tissue Program, which was the legacy program before BrainNet, collected about 150 brains. However, that's just not enough. We need many more people of all ages, and even those who don't have autism, to really understand what's going on and where the differences are. And just to give you an example, I'm going to describe a study that just came out that used brain tissue that could have been even more powerful if more samples were available for this experiment to analyze. So here goes. David Ameral's group at the University of California, Davis used brain tissue from an area called the amygdala. He and his colleagues have spent decades trying to understand the amygdala, which is sometimes called the emotional fear center of the brain, and how it's different in people with autism. They compared the number of brain cells that communicate with each other, these are called neurons, and then to support cells, which are called glial cells. The glial cells provide physical support to the neurons and insulate the cells as the neurons talk to one another. So the oligodendrocytes, or the glia cells, are the insulation that allows the signal that goes from one end of the neuron to the other end of the neuron. So instead of me telling you about this study, we've got a special treat. Here's Cynthia Schumann, who was an author on the paper. She helped design the study and she analyzed the data. She can do a better job than I can of describing the studies anyway, and so here's what she had to say.
The goal of our study, published this week in the journal PLOS ONE, was to understand how certain types of cells may be different in an area of the brain called the amygdala in adolescents and adults with an autism spectrum disorder. We know that the amygdala is part of a system that modulates social and emotional behavior, and that this region develops and functions differently in people with autism. Previously, we had found that there are fewer neurons in this region in adults with autism. In this study, we looked at another type of cell called microglia. These cells become activated as part of our normal immune system. But we found that in about 20% of people with autism, these cells are actually overactivated, indicating that there might be an aberrant immune response in the brain. But importantly, this was only true for about 20%, suggesting a subtype of autism that involves aberrant immune response or inflammation in this region. Another type of cell called oligodendrocytes, which normally form the myelin that wraps around axons and helps neurons communicate with each other, we found that there are also fewer of these oligodendrocytes in adults with autism, and that the number might actually be decreasing as people with autism get older. These findings may provide a possible sign of altered connectivity or impaired neuronal communication in the amygdala that may be changing across a person's lifespan, but which also opens up the possibility for developing treatments for adolescents and adults with autism now that we know more information about these different cell types?
Cindy referred to a 20% number. That 20% number she referred to could mean that there's a subset of individuals with autism who show a microglial response, that immune response. These individuals could have a distinct set of behavioral features and might be responsive to a specific type of intervention. But the problem is that there were only 2 of them out of 8. There's no way you can make a conclusion based on those numbers. The same with the findings in the older individuals with ASD, the ones that were older than 20 years. There's just not enough samples to make a firm conclusion. In other words, we need more brains. Now, switching gears a little bit, I want to talk about a new study that shows how the internet is doing good in the world. A new study came out this week on the use of video conferencing in using it to diagnose autism through a computer connection, similar to using Skype. There's been a surge in studies using this type of technology, especially in the past 2 years. Trust me, this isn't the last time you'll be hearing about this type of research. The reason it's so important is that many children are on a wait list for diagnosis. Many clinicians and researchers are really concerned about this in addition to parents, and they're exploring ways to reduce wait times and improve services to families who may live hundreds of miles away from the closest clinical care center or can't make it in. In this particular study, and I want to emphasize this is one of many, clinicians at the University of Kansas Medical Center were testing whether or not this kind of approach might work. They taught parents how to engage their children in behaviors that were necessary for standardized autism assessments. These are something called the ADOS. This is the gold standard for diagnosis. They did a group that was the video conference and those who got the in-person assessments. The findings were very promising. While there were some minor disagreements in the specific symptoms of ASD between the 2 groups, overall there was high agreement in the actual diagnosis. As far as how the families were able to participate, of course there was some variability. Each family is unique and nobody can be expected to all have the same level of ability. But those results were encouraging too. So, okay, now we might be able to diagnose remotely. What good will this do? Another study published last year in Canada showed that coaching parents through the internet on early intervention techniques can actually be effective. They improve some of the behaviors of ASD. This telemedicine approach didn't prove that this would lead to a change in diagnosis, but again, for families that can't access traditional based intervention models for a number of reasons, it may help with certain symptoms like, for example, saying and understanding words. This is a growing field and you'll be hearing more about it, I promise. So next week, ASF is co-sponsoring and co-organizing a meeting on sex and gender differences in autism. We'll have a lot to report in addition to new publications and findings. You actually may have heard about this meeting already from announcements on our website or maybe if you're on our mailing list. If you can't make it, don't worry, we'll be writing a summary and posting it online. The reason we're doing this is that it's unclear right now if there is a 4-to-1 sex ratio in girls versus boys, or if researchers are just not doing a good job identifying girls. If it's the latter, we need to do a better job of finding girls with ASD and helping them with their unique needs and challenges. Stay tuned, and I can't wait to report back some of the findings. Have a great weekend.